All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of Bourbon Banter Evans. Justin, what are we going to be talking to the people about today?
You know, it looks like we're going to be doing Michter's 10, a little comparison between a 23 and a 24, but that's not true. We are doing Uncut Unfiltered.
Yep.
We are doing the Bourbon number 2, which is a term that we came up with for the Bourbon Bubble. So this is the bourbon market. Is it volatile right now?
Yeah, it makes you wonder sometimes, doesn't it, right now?
Definitely. And just so we can start this off, just as tradition does, do I have bourbon socks on?
Yes, sir, you do.
And I am getting towards the tail end of back surgery, so I'm able to sit a little bit longer, stand a little bit longer, and lay a little bit longer, and drink a little bit longer, hopefully.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. If you've been following and tracking any of the why is Justin standing in some and sitting in the others, so getting towards the end of recovering, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, hit that like and subscribe button, guys.
This is true. So we do have Michter's 10 poured in our glasses.
We do.
And we have a couple other things in the background. So let's get on into the news, if you want to call it that. And the news is the bourbon market is volatile. And you might be thinking to yourself, what do you mean volatile?
Well, I mean, honestly, what I'm seeing is you've got Cooperage that just shut down.
This is true. There was one that was for sale and sold, and then there was one that foreclosed or something like that,
Yep.
And then you've got, a couple other situations that are happening. So a lot of the smaller ones aren't making it.
Right.
And the craft bourbon boom, if you want to call it that, is slowed down. I remember, let's say 12 to 13 years ago, there was a new craft store that popped up every 10 minutes. It seemed like, and their product was $50 off the shelf. Now they're coming out with $150 products that aren't doing anything but becoming shelf turds and just sitting on the shelf.
Yeah, reminds me a lot of like when craft breweries started up. Kind of seems like they've kind of saturated the market. Now you're seeing the ones starting to kind of fall out.
Yes, and we do have some people in the background. So by any means, if you guys have any comments, questions, or anything you want to add to the bourbon market and what you've seen, just step up to the microphone and the camera. You can come on camera if you want. But other than that,
we also want to hear from you guys too. Yeah. Tell us your comments.
Cheers and Michter's 10. What is in your glass? So 23 versus 24.
Yep, 23 versus 24. And this one is the 23, I believe, right?
Almost. By the way, if you guys have not acquired Michter's 10, we just did a short one-sip showdown video involving some 10-year bourbon in it.
Yeah.
This is a great way to save a little bit, but still not cheap, and get a great 10-year, in this case, single barrel.
I'll tell you what, it's the first time I've had Michter's 10, and it's good. It's good.
It's actually really good.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite of the Michter's line. I've had the 20. The 20 was good. It was rather, toothpicky, if you want to call it that. This has got a really good depth balance to it, but at the same time has just the right character that I'm looking for. So it's a cool side-by-side from the 2 different year releases, obviously 2 different single barrels. So back to the bourbon market. What's the biggest thing you've noticed in the secondary world, which we all know that exists, whether it's in a state that's allowed or not?
Right.
What is the biggest thing you've noticed recently in the bourbon market?
Honestly, it's seeing how the prices of some of them are starting to come down. Some of your
significant.
Some of your sought after ones that I'd say like Wellers or anything like your B-Tax, that type of stuff, the prices are definitely coming down on those.
That was a Wellers plural for talking about mini Wellers.
Yes.
For you, Steve, not what you were hoping it to be. Thank you, Steve, for the Wellers comments. Also, what I've noticed is in the Winkle line is we're going to name names that we monitor it, but there is a specific bottle that has almost dropped $1,000 off what its secondary peaked at, and then there's another one that has dropped $500, which is where it should have been, never above.
Yeah, and it's starting to seem what's crazy is for me. I was also seeing what the secondary is prices compared to some of the local prices now. It's kind of like they're kind of equalizing where secondary and local prices are kind of. It depends on where you're at too. And it depends on the stores, but some of them are very comparable, and you're like, okay, what do I want to do?
We're seeing a lot of the situations when the bottle first hits, and it's real hot, and everybody wants that first line, like say when B-Tech first landed for 2024. The secondary was at a point that was similar to the exact same reflection of what was on the shelf. Now that it's calmed down, you're still seeing that shelf the same price, but you could have gotten a legit, don't have to worry about anything, what your market is, no shipping involved, it's on the shelf, just grab it and go. And so that I'm finding a little bit interesting in the bourbon market world as well. The other thing is we're seeing new products hit. That seems to be the only way that I'm seeing a bunch of spark. And people are going after the ones that are available and this random name for this year, so on and so forth. They exist. They're just not sought after.
And it's some of the ones that are hard to find, normally hard to find, that are in the secondary that see that aren't changing as much as some of the other products too.
Cheers. What's your thoughts on Michter's 10 and what's in your glass?
Yeah, give us those comments. Let us know what you're seeing. If you think we're spot on, if you think we're completely off, and
or let us know what your market's doing.
Yeah,
because again, we generally refer to Evans, which is our market, but we do a little bit of travel in Georgia, and we go through Tennessee and Kentucky and things like that. So it's not like we're not traveling and not seeing these things. I haven't been traveling.
Right.
I will be getting back to travel.
Well, we talk to plenty of people who do travel.
Yeah, and so the other thing that I'm noticing is let's just say, for example, in the bourbon market, Sazerac, huge player.
Oh, yeah.
Completed their expansion, to my understanding. So that $1.2 billion expansion that they started, I believe, in 2015 is completed. And so now they've got, twice the amount of production that they can do. They've got those 11 new rick houses, which are massive. I think they're like 57,000 barrels. Jeez. Another still that's pumping out. They're probably pumping out plenty of liquid.
Yeah. And
that's going to be what I think in the market is why it's driving some of these products down, because now they're finding them more available.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big player. Is it going to become volatile to where, is this going to be something that you wanted to invest in and then you lose your investment because, I can go get 50 of those tomorrow if I'm going to drive to this state.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before.
Oh, yeah.
The example that we have in our market is Eagle Rare.
Eagle Rare. Yep.
Yep.
And Buffalo Trace to a certain extent.
To an extent, yeah. The example for Ohio is Weller. Mm-hmm. Specific ones, but if you live in that area, then you have greater odds of getting those bottles on a regular, whereas some markets don't have it at all.
Yeah.
And I just recently, I guess, learned from somebody I was talking to that there are some California markets that are being pushed a ton of good, what we would call juice, liquid, bourbon, and it's sitting.
Really?
Yeah, but California, whether you call that a bourbon state or not, it's never been on my radar. It's always been
wine to me.
Wine, vodka, and tequila.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is another changing factor. It's like, are they reaching to try to create more, want for what they've got, or are they creating at such an extensive amount and production time level that the only way to sell things is to innovate a new product, like the supposedly Weller 18 that's coming out from their wheat that was involved in their millennium.
Well, and it makes you wonder. It's could be like what Heaven Hill 17, Heaven Hill 18. Those certain ones.
I don't think those are ever going to stop being in the market as far as successful.
Right.
Now, are they going to be volatile? Could be up or down. Sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to fall as much as your regular standard products.
Right.
That are going to be now on the shelf all the time. Whereas before, there was a mass exodus of trying to make sure that you were able to get those bottles. And I'm seeing a lot of stores online and on social media, and they're doing all these cool ideas to sell these other products. Like there's this one store, super cool idea. And once you make it on the list and support the store, whatever points, whatever their system is, you get to go into the room and you have like 5 to 10 seconds to pick a bottle out.
Yeah.
And it's like right when you pick the bottle, that's yours. But if you weren't paying attention to what you walked past or didn't see, you're done. And in one of the videos, it was like I said, we just mentioned this, is an Eagle Rare.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't see it in that state because it's a different state than Georgia, but we see it here. So it's like their focus was like, I don't recognize this as much as I should.
Yeah,
so,
I mean that's like Alabama. Alabama does not see Eagle Rare whatsoever.
Yeah, that's a control state as well. So, and so would you ever consider? Cheers. What's in your glass? Would you ever consider bourbon as an investment, or is this a actual consumable good that was gaining popularity? Now volatile in the market, prices are coming down with the exception of MSRPs going up because taking advantage of the situation. Could this be the beginning of the 80s? That's a valid question.
It is. It's tough to ponder too. You're sitting there, you think about it. Do we see some signs? Yeah. Could it be heading that direction? Who knows?
And to be honest with you, if it does go back to the 80s, then we're going to we're going to hang in with Scotch and start putting really high age statements on there because they're doing it, and they're not to say that's what took over in 73. I believe it was vodka that took over. Yeah. But, I think 1963 or 4 is when Glenfiddich was the first imported single malt Scotch that came over. That's what that was. And so it's like, that was a while ago, but that was a thing, and it was becoming popular. So 80s started losing traction in bourbon, 80s and 90s. We all know that.
Oh, yeah.
And it resorted back to, now we have what I've said before in video, old Charter 12 year.
Yep.
if you just have whiskey barrels sitting there, that's not time for them to be bottled.
Buffalo Trace
tons
18.
of them. Yeah. What are the odds that we are distilling twice as much now, and then 10 years from now we're like, we still have the ones.
Yeah.
Like, don't need them yet.
Right.
And then, okay, let's see if we have a Buffalo Trace 18.
That would be hilarious.
Or just your standard production Heaven Hill 18. Look at all the pre-fire products.
Oh God.
That existed, and especially the ones that were sent to overseas markets, Japan being one of the major ones.
And you've seen some video. We've done a couple videos of some pre-fire stuff. So
yeah, definitely. And just learning if it does resort back, that could be interesting. There's a reason that Blanton's was sold and is produced in Kentucky by Buffalo Trace, but isn't owned by them.
Right.
And they're the producer, but that was a brilliant idea to sell it at the time when it wasn't doing much. But then for them to keep it this long, because now they're doing just fine.
Yeah, they're doing just fine with that.
So Michter's 10 on the 24 year versus the 23. I believe I'll sip on that now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to a little Weller 12 right here.
So what you guys' thought, is the bourbon market becoming volatile? Is it sustaining for you? Is it down? Is it up? Are you out? Are you in? Have you lost interest?
Or do you think it's just still what it is?
Is it a consumable good, and is it just like any other market that's going to go up and down? You just got to ride it out.
I'll say that I think that the market tends to spike when a very popular new allocated release occurs and immediately crashes because finally the market begins to flood with that product finally rolling out and getting into the stores, and then it stays low and begins to creep back up throughout the year until that next release, the next annual release of said popular line, falls again and finally drops back into the stores again, and then you have the spike in the fall and the very gradual build back up.
That's actually a great point, and I agree 100%.
Going through
when a new product or new
stuff.
release, strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah.
Go ahead and grab it while you can, if you can get it. Make it limited originally. Make it hard to get.
Right.
Add to that, what do they call it? FOMO?
Yeah.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And add to that, and then you get the first one. You're like, wow, I finally got it. And then a year later, they've got multiple of them, and it's kind of less exciting, and the price has gone down maybe. Or you roll out another one and play off of that, like you were talking about, and try to get that same want to go get those. But are we going to turn this industry, and so this is a question to you, Alan, in the background, and Charles.
Yeah.
If we're going to go off of that, is the industry going to turn into one-hit wonders or one-offs? What are we going to be doing? Are we going to be consuming their standard everyday products, or are we only looking for the 10 years, not the regular Michter's? Or are we only looking for the, let's just make something up, a 17 and a half year aged in a toasted barrel that's got some preferred grain in it?
Yeah. For me, it kind of seems like the market's already there a little bit because you have a lot of these that are coming out. And so you're always going to have your go-tos, like 1792, regular 1792 go-to, that type of stuff. But you see a lot of people that are just holding out. They're going to they're buying their everyday or whatever else, but then they're holding out for a Michter's 10. They're not going to go buy regular Michter's. So I kind of see it already there to a certain extent. I don't know, Alan. What are your thoughts?
So
I get it. What you were saying too, by the way, it makes sense. So go ahead, Alan. Sorry.
no, go ahead. I'm going to come back around.
Okay. So with the Michter's, I get it, but if they're holding out like you're talking about, you're going to drink the regular go-to, most accounts are waiting for that loyal customer to help them for MSRP or towards that.
Yeah.
If they don't do that, all that does is continue to inflate secondary on your primary market. So instead of this, let's just say this is $125, you might have to pay $165 for it because secondary is $200 on it.
Right.
And again, we have yet to do a secondary video. I don't think we're going to, but we are not afraid to talk about it. It is a thing. It does exist.
It is that.
It's no different than Auto Trader.
Right.
It's just private groups on whatever things.
Whatever
and certain states allow it, certain states don't.
Right.
Auto Trader is reselling a car. It's reselling whiskey as long as it's allowed in that state.
Exactly.
So it does exist. We see it. But it does help the market stay value on the ones that are sought after because I don't want to spend the money that took me to get your list call of, hey, you support this store, thank you very much, which I always recommend. Support your local stores for sure. And then you get the chance to do this. But that I agree with you, is geared towards the people that consume, not the people that are waiting only for the big ones.
Correct.
Go ahead, Alan.
So now piggybacking off of both of those, I think about the major release products. Could I name a very specific product?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Let's say Double Eagle Very Rare.
Great one. Yep.
All right, so that's really hard to find.
Oh,
and
yeah.
If you find it, it's already thousands of dollars, and then you find it not on a shelf, or maybe actually, if you were so lucky to find it on a shelf, it's because it was way more than just a couple of $1,000s.
Yep.
However, not too long ago, those things weren't just a few $1,000s; they were $20,000, and part of that was because they started producing so much more. Instead of releasing just 1 or 2 barrels, they were releasing multiple barrels, and so it was easier to get a hold of. But there's a second part of this, and that is that as time goes on, and this is coming back to the question you were just asking,
Sure.
is that if you don't create the new product with the different label and the different profile, then what happens is if I find the Double Eagle Very Rare, and it happens to be the 2024 or the 2025, as excited as I was to find a 2015 Double Eagle Very Rare, I no longer have this like burning desire to get that older expression.
Did they lose the target audience?
Correct,
Yep.
because now with the new larger batches that they're making of this, that then tanks the value. Once I get a hold of that bottle at the lower value, I'm no longer chasing it at the higher value for those older expressions.
Correct. So then it's going to be a specific target audience only for the small batches that have limited bottle runs versus now the larger ones. And it's only going to be a specific target audience that's willing to spend what used to be 20 is now 10, but you can get the regular for 4 or 5. That's going to be a very small amount.
Yeah. The other thing I would also say is this. I think there's a third. Is the juice worth the squeeze? And so that's the thing right there. Is the juice? A lot of times we've seen it where you say you got a 24, then they come out with a 25. The 25 could be crap. And all of a sudden, they put it out there, and a lot of people don't like the flavor on it.
And I definitely recommend, if the juice is worth a squeeze, a barrel that we did. I appreciate that.
Yes, indeed.
Little zinger.
Yeah, I had to put that in there.
Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yep.
Yes, I labeled mine Mattingly that.
Yes,
yeah.
indeed.
And it was worth
very
the squeeze.
Yes, it was.
So, yeah, but back to what you're saying. Like, if you got massive batches of 20 year versus just one small single barrel version of it, it's going to be stark differences.
Yeah.
And that could definitely change, every bit of the market.
Yeah, the profile is a lot to it. And sometimes we've seen it. Sometimes the profile does not work well and that the other profiles have.
But for your major enthusiast, you're still going to have the opportunity to go get the same bottle for less money and still have it on the bar if they're willing to do it. But let's actually address the other part of this, is that bottle 3 years older than the other Eagle Rare 17 at $120 worth $2,500 MSRP. What other than the crystal decanter adds that to where it dictates that we can get 4 or 5 on secondary?
Right.
Yeah. So are these muscle cars? Are we buying these on the original days that they're being produced and holding them for 40 years and having a target audience that's willing to pay for them before that target audience dies out, which is what's happening with muscle cars. Muscle cars market is moving down because you don't have the people that can work on them, you don't have the people that can maintain them, and you have a bunch of people that don't care about them.
Right.
And so is that target audience going to move, which I like what Alan said, if you don't have those one-hit wonders that are coming out to keep the audience like engaged.
Yeah.
So my honest question is are we losing the target audience? And is this going to go away to back to us regular guys that just enjoy drinking and talking about it and use it as a way to get together, a way to try it, a way to discuss it, camaraderie, and my biggest collection that I have is upside down empty on a wall downstairs, and I haven't talked about that in 10 years. Well, that's probably an exaggeration, probably 5 years.
I don't know. I mean, it's all a good question, and one that we'd love to hear some comments about, too.
Yeah, like and subscribe, which is usually his line.
Yep.
Cheers, what's in your glass? Now I'm moving on to 1792 12 year.
Weller 12 for me.
Okay, now having had the Michter's 10 side by side from 23 to 24, and then going to 1792 12.
Which one?
1792 12.
Yep.
That's it. This L24, it is just a fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be several people that disagree with that. Please notify me who you are, why.
Yeah,
I'd
I'd like to know.
I would like to know too, just because I want to know what your profile, preference is, because I really prefer that balance coming off of that proof, which is similar. This is even more close in proof to, even though those are identical, but the 12 year of this versus, Weller 12 is completely different. It's 90. This is going to be 96, and that's going to be 94. But
And if you have any 1792 12s that you just don't like, bring them by, please.
yeah, we'll gladly do like 19 through 24.
We'll do plenty of videos of 1792 12 year.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so maybe I'm a little biased because, 1792 was the first half gallon that I ever drank.
I'll tell you what.
But it wasn't called 1792. It was called Ridgemont Reserve.
You're not biased with that. 1792 12 year it's for
just
me
good.
it's been good.
Yeah.
It's good.
So on the market, when it first rolled out, speaking of, again, the Bourbon Bubble, and the Bourbon Market, this would be our Bourbon Market number 2, or Bourbon, What's the Point?
Yep.
Was technically the first version of this. 1792 12 year, when it first came out, it was easily 150 to 200.
Yep.
And they were getting it. Now, if you see it on a shelf, it's obviously anywhere between 60 and 100.
Yeah.
And I think secondary is floating around the 100 range.
It is.
And so, why is that 12 year not as recognized as a Van Winkle Lot B, a Weller 12,
right?
Or
and it's comparable.
Insert whatever 12 year, and that to me is a perfectly fine bourbon.
It's comparable, and I think a lot of it comes down to it just doesn't have that hype factor.
Personally, another great point. In the bourbon market, the one-hit wonders are driving the hype.
Yep.
And so if hype is the way to go, I'm going to go back to the same thing I said earlier in the video. If the Weller 18 does exist in the next part of the Weller line, it's a wheat whiskey. It's not a bourbon.
Right.
It's the same wheat whiskey that obviously they figured out how to put into the Millennium, which we talked about before on video,
yes, we have.
Which is like a $7,500 MSRP, which is more than what the secondary brings.
Right.
So good luck with that one. But it's got some 20 year in there. So I'm guessing this is the 18 year, probably experimental version of the Warehouse, which we went through during Bourbon Fest, which is super cool. You're going next time.
Yes, indeed.
That being said, if you have a $7,500 Weller product with a 20-year wheat whiskey in it that brings in that kind of MSRP, what's the 18-year Weller line going to be?
Yes.
In the same shape bottle. I don't have a Weller sitting near me. Same shape bottle with a different label. If that's approved and it's actually true, what can that possibly be other than the $50 that all the other MSRPs are?
Hey, that one, we've talked about that one in our previous video. It's just, I'm dumbfounded by
that. That is going back to the bourbon. What is it? What's the purpose?
What's the purpose?
Who is their target audience? Who's their market on that?
Exactly.
What is their market?
Yeah.
Who did lots of research, lots of numbers crunching data on a computer and said,
all the Wall Street guys, that's who they're doing.
We have this percentage of people that's willing to spend this amount of money on bourbon. And don't worry about the guys that guarantee our business to be in functioning form that's $25 a bottle every week. We're just going to go to one bottle a year.
Yeah.
That's just different. That's interest for me that I'm just a little bit,
Yeah, I mean, I think we've made our point on that one before, and if you hadn't seen it, look up our video on that one. That was a good video.
It was.
What's the point?
Yeah. What's the point? And so this is technically What's the Point too, but we're calling it the Bourbon Bubble, and Bourbon Market.
Yep.
So, I mean, this is always going to be a third, a fourth, or fifth version.
It is.
Uncut, unfiltered. Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, yes.
A vision. This is our vision, version. So I say we call it this. We had some Michters. We had some 1792 12s, some Weller 12. We talked about our thoughts on the market. So I would...
And
what are your thoughts?
And that's what we're here. We're here bantering about this, and we want to know what your thoughts are. Put it in the comments down there, guys.
Yes. As we try to make the videos not as long as before.
Yeah.
Because we want more comments. And give us something else to talk about what you said or respond to. We could technically talk about this for hours.
We could.
But we do that mostly behind the scenes on camera, after the camera shut down, and then, 1 o'clock in the morning later, we're asleep up here on the floor.
And we got a new little thing we started, One Sip Showdown, so you'll see that out there.
Stay tuned for the One Sip Showdowns.
Yep.
We've been saying the 3-sip process for a long time, but we are now doing a new version of a One Sip Showdown. Just makes it really interesting. You have to be on the spot with what it is.
And it was fun, so.
Yeah. So cheers, thanks for joining in, and as always, what's in your glass?